My husband was an eccentric artist. On the day his first love announced her wedding, he slashed his wrists and took his own life. Before passing, he used his own blood to paint The Fall of the Moonlight, a piece that stunned the art world and garnered numerous awards. His will was broadcast globally, and in it he bequeathed 99 paintings to his first love, who had lost her memory. This gesture was meant to honor their love, but it made me the subject of ridicule online. He said, "With the fall of the moonlight, my life ends once again." I helped him pack the paintings into his first love's bag, then quietly returned to my seat. However, he looked at me with red, despairing eyes and said, "Without you, I can't create anything great anymore." The day I discovered I was pregnant, my husband committed suicide. I pushed through the grief and handled his posthumous matters, only to find that all of his paintings had been taken by the lawyer. Then, news of the death of a genius artist hit the front page of my phone. I casually clicked on it, shocked to find that the artist in question was my late husband, Zephyr. 3 days prior, I had visited his studio, thrilled with my pregnancy test results. But when I opened the door, I found his lifeless body and blood everywhere. The Fall of the Moonlight, which was now hailed as a timeless masterpiece, was there as well. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the news, tormenting myself by reading about it. As requested in Zephyr's will, his final wishes were made public after his death. Each of his paintings contained a hidden message. "Iris, do you remember me?" My blood ran cold. Who was Iris? Tears streamed down my face, and the grief I had buried for days finally overwhelmed me. I realized then that every painting he made was for another woman. We had been together for 8 years, but his heart and art belonged to someone else. All I was left with was a lifeless body. I had confessed my love to Zephyr after graduating high school, helping him rise from obscurity to become a celebrated artist. I had believed I was the one who allowed him to express his talent freely. After all, we spent 8 years together. Surely, I held a place in his heart. But on the very day I learned I was pregnant, he slashed his wrists and painted his final masterpiece for his beloved. He had said, "With the fall of the moonlight, my life also ends." But if Iris was his moonlight, then what was I? I attended the live broadcast where the media crowded around, and Zephyr's lawyer stood with tears in his eyes. "The Fall of the Moonlight is Zephyr's final gift to his lover," he said. According to Zephyr's will, all 99 of his exhibited paintings, along with his final masterpiece, were to go to MZ Iris. I saw Iris step onto the stage, her eyes red, as though she had been under immense stress. What grief was she feeling? As soon as she stood in front of the cameras, she broke down, recounting their love story with tearful sincerity. "I'm sorry. I lost my memory and didn't know all he had done for me. The day he died was my wedding day. I had no idea he would do this. I'm really sorry," she sobbed. And I received invitations to his exhibitions over the years, but I never went. I didn't realize they were all from him. I listened in a daze. During the 8 years we spent together, Zephyr never once showed any longing for Iris. He simply created his works in silence. I had no idea that all the love he held inside was meant for someone else. The lawyer calling my name snapped me back to reality. The sympathy in his eyes was palpable, and the cameramen picked up on the tension, focusing their lenses on me. The next moment, the lawyer handed me a letter, and I finally understood why Zephyr had taken his own life. In high school, Zephyr and Iris had shared a secret and passionate romance. He had poured his heart into painting countless portraits of her. One of these had accidentally fallen into my hands, leading me to mistakenly believe that he had feelings for me. Zephyr had intended to reveal their relationship after graduation, but a car accident had robbed Iris of her memory. The last call she had received before the accident had been from me, and in Zephyr's eyes, I was the cause of all their misfortune. He married me, doted on me, and turned me from a strong, independent woman into a housewife who depended on him. Then, just when I loved him most, he revealed he was leaving me. Not only that, but he broadcast to the world that he had never loved me. "I know you love me," his letter read, "but you will never have my love because you don't deserve it. Every day with you disgusted me. Only thoughts of Iris kept me going. I want you to live with this regret for the rest of your life. It became clear that Zephyr had planned to destroy me entirely. The success I had helped him build, the years of silence I endured, and the love I had thought would reach him, it had all meant nothing. The pain in my heart swelled as though a piece had been cut away. Zephyr, you really were a villain. Iris's husband seemed to speak, but I could no longer hear him. Through that letter, I saw all of Zephyr's repressed emotions and love for Iris. Ironically, it had all started 8 years ago when I was drawn to his good looks and admired his strength. After receiving one of his paintings, I had fallen in love with him, convinced he felt the same. He wasn't warm to me, but he accepted my confession. Before we married, I once cried and asked if he truly didn't love me. Zephyr had laughed. Isn't this what you wanted? He kissed me fiercely as though angry, questioning me again and again. Isn't this what you wanted? Say something. After every exhibition, he would push me onto the bed like a wild beast, out of control. I had once thought it was just his nature, but now I understood. His rage stemmed from Iris repeatedly failing to remember their past, so he unleashed his frustration on me. I stood to leave, but the media wouldn't let such a big story go. They shoved microphones in my face, asking, Aren't you Zephyr's wife? Did you know he had another lover? How did you feel during those years? They crowded in closer, eager to capture every moment. In the chaos, a female reporter pinched me and sneered, Those who ruin true love will face retribution. I grabbed her microphone and trembling said, If he didn't want to marry me, could I have forced him to? Ask Zephyr why he abandoned his wife and child to die for a married woman. I pushed my way through the stunned crowd and hurried outside. Even in the car, I couldn't stop shaking. My hands hovered over the keys as I decided to head to the hospital to end the pregnancy. Zephyr may have tried to destroy me, but I was determined to live on. Yet, things didn't go as planned. I was hoping a speeding truck would come at me in the next moment, completely out of control. I blacked out and lost all awareness. When I came to, I found myself seated back in the classroom, holding a painting in my hands. It was a picture of a girl's back in a school uniform, the very painting that Zephyr had given Iris in my previous life. Suddenly, I looked up and spotted a younger Zephyr in the corner of the room. He was wearing his school uniform with the buttons undone, headphones in his ears, and twirling a pen impatiently like a typical school troublemaker. I used to be so captivated by him that his indifference only fueled my desire to win him over. Now my fingers felt icy as I forced myself to swallow the anger boiling inside me. Sensing my stare, Zephyr turned around, his hostile eyes cutting into me. ASD, stop looking at me like that. I'm not interested in some self-important top student like you, he warned coldly. Without waiting for a response, he snapped his paintbrush shut, accidentally brushing his fingertips against it, a habit he had whenever his favorite brush was damaged. My heart sank. This was the same Zephyr from 11 years later, the madman reincarnated. Raising my eyebrows, I let out a mocking laugh. Zephyr, don't flatter yourself. I was just looking at the blackboard. You really think you're something special, huh? Like you're gold that everyone wants a piece of? His lips curled into a meaningful smile, and without another word, he sauntered out through the back door. His presence was irritating, to say the least. I stared at the painting on my desk, feeling the weight of it like a ticking time bomb, before following him out of the classroom. I trailed him to the next class, where I saw Iris and suddenly remembered her. She had been the high school beauty, the object of affection for many boys, always laughing and carefree in her modified school uniform, unlike me, who was always buried in textbooks. Perhaps their lively atmosphere was too much for Zephyr, as his eyes welled up when he softly called out Iris's name. She glanced back, smiled sweetly, and I quietly handed the painting to one of Iris's classmates. You're so in love with her? Then lock yourselves away this time and don't come out again. I returned to my seat in the classroom, clutching my book, feeling a bit lost. Everything was happening so fast, and it felt surreal, almost like a dream. The vivid memory of gathering Zephyr's lifeless body haunted me, and now seeing him alive again made me feel unsettled. In my previous life, I had sacrificed my dream of studying aerospace to be in the same city as Zephyr, choosing a finance major I hated. After graduation, I even used my money to fund his art exhibitions. How foolish I had been. Now that fate had given me another chance, I was determined not to repeat my mistakes. Instead of being obsessed with someone like him, I would focus on becoming stronger myself. Calming down from my earlier panic, I noticed Zephyr had returned, glaring at me with irritation. ASD, stay away from Iris. I saw you earlier, lurking in the shadows, plotting your usual dirty tricks. You're really something, he spat, loud enough for our classmates to turn and stare. I let him finish, then calmly picked up my water bottle and poured it over him from head to toe. Are you awake now, Zephyr? Want more water? He froze in disbelief, wiping the water from his face. Is this one of your new tactics? He muttered. Just then, Iris walked into our classroom, holding the painting and gasping when she saw Zephyr's soaked appearance. We're all classmates. If there's something to say, you can talk it out properly. Why throw water on someone? She said disapprovingly. The class monitor, unable to bear it any longer, stood up. Don't act innocent, Iris. We all saw Zephyr picking on ASD. Do you two want to gang up on her because you have more people on your side? Her words shifted the class's mood, and soon hostile glances were being thrown at Iris and Zephyr. Sensing the tension, Zephyr diffused the situation. All right, my bad. His suspicious gaze lingered on me before he followed Iris out of the classroom. The monitor looked at me with concern, and I smiled at her in gratitude. The events unfolding were different from how they played out in my previous life. I was trying to steer my path away from my old mistakes, but unexpected things kept happening, like Zephyr refusing to let go. Later, when a sack was thrown over my head, I caught the familiar cold scent of Zephyr, and my nerves settled. I remained still, not making a sound, as I heard one of Zephyr's cronies say, "Shouldn't she be scared by now? Why isn't she crying?" "Maybe she's too frightened," another one chimed in, "or fainted. Let's hope nothing serious happens." Just then, the sack was yanked off, and for a brief moment, Zephyr looked startled. His eyes held a trace of panic before he grabbed my collar, his face darkening with anger. I never knew you were so manipulative. Are you happy now that Iris is getting picked on? You'd better apologize to her after school and stay out of her way from now on, or you'll regret it. My hands clenched into fists, but I remained expressionless. He took it as a challenge, his mood souring even more. I don't care about hitting girls, he started to say, but I cut him off, punching him square in the face. Funny, I have no problem hitting men, I sneered. Some jerks just need to be taught a lesson. Do you think everyone is as despicable as you? Zephyr's reaction to my punch, utter shock, only confirmed what I already knew. In both lives, he was a complete lunatic. But in this new life, he seemed even worse. Just as his lackeys were about to step in, the head teacher suddenly appeared, with the class monitor close behind. ASD, are you okay? She asked, rushing to my side. He refused to do it under any circumstances, saying he lacked the inspiration to draw someone he saw daily and found it incredibly dull. Just as he wished, I hope his first love doesn't end up finding it just as tedious. When we reached the infirmary, the school nurse gave me a thorough examination, and once he was sure I was fine, he relaxed. Zephyr, who was waiting outside, raised his eyebrows when he saw me leave, then smirked and said, "What's the deal?" Asad beats me up, and then she gets to play innocent, claiming we hurt her? How can that be allowed? I think a student like Vess should get a demerit or even be expelled. The shattered halo surrounding Zephyr, the young man who once appeared so fresh in my previous life, had turned him into something ugly. He was like a persistent stain that wouldn't come off no matter how hard you tried to shake it. Could he still believe, even after being reborn, that Iris's memory loss back then was all my fault? This idea took root in my mind and stirred up anger. I recounted the entire story of how they had cornered me. Zephyr may not excel academically, but he certainly knows how to twist the facts. Left without a retort, Zephyr walked away with a grim look on his face. However, I hadn't fully grasped how vile he could be. One day on my way to school, I noticed a crowd gathered around the bulletin board. Curious, I approached and overheard a few classmates talking. Who drew this? I saw it first thing this morning. It's shocking. I don't know who she is, but the poor girl, even the mole on her back is clearly drawn. I felt my blood rush to my head as I looked at the board in disbelief. A drawing was pinned up, showing a girl with black hair flowing in the wind, completely naked with every detail, including a mole on her back and a birthmark on her waist, drawn precisely. The subject of the painting was undeniably me, and the artist could only have been Zephyr. To protect Iris, he didn't even bother to conceal that he had been reborn. Damn it. The class monitor, realizing what was going on from my expression, muttered a curse under her breath, pushed through the crowd, and tore the drawing down. I ran straight to the classroom, where Zephyr leaned casually against the wall, chatting and laughing with Iris. Mustering all my strength, I approached him. Without hesitation, I slapped Zephyr across the face. ASD, Are you out of your mind? He snapped, his anger flaring before quickly subsiding into a mocking grin. Did you like the little gift I gave you? Don't pretend otherwise. You've always wanted to be with the top student, haven't you? Zephyr stressed the last three words, continuing, Don't think I don't know how you dream about being my girlfriend every night. Let me tell you, in this life, I will only love Iris, and I'll paint 99 portraits of her. You? You're not worthy. His words filled me with a rage so intense, it made my heart pound. Not worthy? You're right, I'm not, I said, seething with anger. I had devoted myself to a mad dog, nurturing him, only for him to turn on me, biting me while saying he's tolerated me for too long. My expression changed as disgust washed over me, and I couldn't help but feel physically ill, vomiting. You're right, I continued bitterly. How can a person be compared to a dog? I won't lower myself to your level. Zephyr, be careful who you bite next time. I grabbed a nearby bench and hurled it at his head. Disgusting. You want to drag someone down with you in your relationships? Are you out of your mind? Blood dripped from Zephyr's forehead as he clutched his head, his expression darkening. After hitting him, I picked up the stool again and stormed out of the room, heading straight for the head teacher's office. As soon as I opened the door, I broke down, sobbing uncontrollably as I threw myself into her arms. The head teacher's face hardened when she saw my state. After listening to my account, she stormed into the principal's office to report the matter. By the time Zephyr arrived, a disciplinary notice was already prepared, and several stern faces stared at him intently. With my eyes still swollen and red, I said quietly, I don't even know him well. Why does he keep targeting me and even going as far as drawing such a thing? Could he have sneaked into the girls' dormitory? Zephyr's face turned pale. There was no way he could explain how he knew about the mole and birthmark on my body without revealing his rebirth. So he lied, claiming he overheard me discussing it with others. No one believed him, though, since there was no evidence to support his claim. The school issued him a severe demerit, and the head teacher firmly warned him to stay away from me. After that incident, whenever Zephyr got too close, the girls in the class would subtly distance him from me. Over time, it seemed he accepted that I had lost interest in him and gradually calmed down. Though we shared a classroom, we became like strangers, parallel lines that would never meet again. For the next 3 years of high school, I buried myself in books and made good friends like the class monitor. The opportunity had come again, and I was determined to make the most of it. Of course, rumors about Zephyr and Iris occasionally reached my ears, as they were always the talk of the school. Perhaps their previous secret romance didn't end the way they wanted. So this time, Zephyr was adamant about making their relationship public. Despite many visits to the grade director's office for scolding, it didn't stop him from pursuing her. Did you hear? Zephyr skipped class today to pick flowers for Iris by the pond behind the school. His art teacher found out and stormed off to talk to his parents, complaining about how he hasn't been attending class. What about his future college exams? The class monitor took a sip from her thermos and shook her head in disbelief. I couldn't help but chuckle at her tone, and she leaned in to ask quietly, ASD, which school are you planning to apply to? Having just finished checking over my answers, I put down my pen and replied, I'm aiming for the aerospace engineering program at Tsinghua University. After all the hard work I had put in, my skills were better than ever, and I felt confident in my chances. The monitor, overjoyed, grabbed my arm and exclaimed, That's great. I'm planning to apply to a university in City B, so we'll be close to each other. She was so excited that she reminded me of a little poodle I once had. I couldn't stop myself from chuckling and reached out to pat her head. You guys are dreaming way too big, a female voice interrupted at an ill-timed moment, and a stunning figure approached from behind. It was Iris. She smiled as she placed the items in her hand on Zephyr's desk before turning to leave. The class monitor nearly rolled her eyes. Why is she like that? She grumbled. I flicked her forehead lightly and replied, Everyone has their own dreams. We don't all have to understand each other. Besides, Iris isn't exactly some innocent first love. During the final 100 days of prep for the college entrance exams, I worked tirelessly to master every subject. Though I clearly remembered the exam questions from my past life, I didn't rely on them for an easy way out. Life changes. Like a butterfly flapping its wings, no one can guarantee things will unfold the same way. Take Zephyr, for instance. He seemed self-assured, yet his once-loved paintbrush had gathered dust recently. He spent his days acting secretively, flipping through books for exam questions, which he would then share with Iris. Unfortunately for Zephyr, despite being an art student in his past life, he struggled with memorization, so he didn't bother with the questions. There were whispers that he had found a set of questions that could supposedly guarantee at least 500 points. He aimed to attend the same university as Iris. Upon hearing this, I remained composed and simply tackled a few more practice tests. Blind faith in luck isn't wise. When the exam results were released, Zephyr's face was ashen, and Iris, furious, threw a pen at him, unleashing her anger without restraint. I must have been insane to trust a madman like you. You talk big, but what have you actually done? The commotion they caused blocked the exit of the exam hall, and I stood in the crowd, observing the whole scene with quiet amusement. Zephyr, eyes bloodshot with frustration, roared at Iris, "I love you! Why don't you understand? What's so important about the college entrance exams? I can take care of you with my art in the future." Iris scoffed. "No, your art? How much do you think you'll earn from painting, Zephyr? Don't make me laugh." I watched as Zephyr's face slowly shifted from anger to disappointment. Just then, the class monitor slipped some melon seeds into my palm, gesturing for me to eat with her. "This is a rare spectacle. Let's enjoy it," she said. Since the exam was over, we ate the seeds guilt-free until Iris mentioned breaking up. Zephyr suddenly lifted his head, his expression wild. Grabbing her shoulders, he fixed his gaze on her. "Break up? Impossible. Don't even think about leaving me in this lifetime." His pupils dilated and a strange smile tugged at his lips. He didn't seem sane, and even I was startled. Iris, visibly shaken, mumbled something before quickly catching a taxi home. Zephyr stood there, staring blankly after her, lost in thought. After the entrance exams, it was time to celebrate. While everyone else was enjoying the newfound freedom, I hadn't paid any attention to Zephyr. That is, until the class monitor approached me, saying something had happened to Iris. A sudden wave of discomfort hit me. In my past life, I was in charge of inviting classmates to the teacher appreciation banquet. When Iris didn't show up, I called her. She assured me she'd be there, but shortly afterward, she got into a car accident and lost her memory. I had no idea what had caused it. In this life, I declined the responsibility, yet she still lost her memory. The class monitor, a few classmates, and I visited her in the hospital. Iris was lying in bed, looking pale and dazed. Only when the doctor came in to change her IV did she flash a shy smile. The atmosphere was oddly suggestive, especially with Zephyr standing outside with a stormy expression. "Are you my classmates?" "I'm sorry, I lost my memory and don't remember you," Iris said softly. She appeared delicate, like a fragile beauty. I couldn't help but make a strange face until the class monitor nudged me and whispered, "Hold it in. We'll laugh about it when we leave." She then cleared her throat, grabbed my hand, and handed Iris a bouquet of white carnations. Iris's smile froze when she saw the flowers. After a brief pause, she pretended not to mind, likely because the doctor was still there. "These flowers are lovely. Too bad I can't recall who you are," she said. The class monitor waved off the remark and pulled something from behind her back. "No worries. This is your boyfriend, right? Do you remember him?" Take a closer look. Iris leaned back like a scared deer, clutching her head as if in pain. "My head hurts. I don't know who he is." The doctor's expression shifted instantly, and he took Iris in his arms, sternly telling us to leave. "The patient can't handle this kind of stress," he warned. In that instant, Zephyr lost control and punched the doctor, shouting, "Don't touch her!" Chaos erupted as a group of people rushed in to break up the fight. The class monitor stood there in shock, while I grabbed her hand and walked away without a second glance. How thrilling it all was. It wasn't just because of the fight. I recognized Iris's doctor. He had been her husband in my past life. Apparently, Zephyr had realized he was facing a rival, and fate had brought them back together. Feeling sentimental, I went to buy an ice pop, only to be dragged away by Zephyr. His grip on my wrist was firm as he pulled me into a secluded corner. The once brilliant artist now looked disheveled, his messy hair covering his eyes. He stared at me and spat, "Why do you keep hanging around like some ghost? I thought I'd escaped from you in this life. You're disgusting. Do you like me so much that you keep tormenting her?" His words irritated me. I had just enjoyed a nice beef dinner, and now it was all ruined. Unable to help myself, I vomited on Zephyr's clothes. Ignoring the dark look on his face, I wiped my mouth and said, "Zephyr, you're delusional. Do I look like I'm into you? Was it also my fault that Iris fell from the second floor? Did you see me push her?" I didn't expect Zephyr to comprehend. His thinking had always been off. But surprisingly, this time was different. His face gradually turned pale, and it seemed like he wasn't completely clueless. "She's been lying to me all along," he muttered, his voice tinged with despair, his head drooping. The brokenness in him mirrored that of Iris. I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. "Don't be too upset. Maybe she'll remember one day." I let a smirk slip through. "You should go back to her. I'm sure she needs you now." Zephyr stood, his tall figure swallowed by the night. He wavered before speaking softly. "Was it really all my fault?" He then pounded his fist against the wall, blood trickling down, yet he kept hitting it as though he couldn't feel the pain. I frowned, thinking to myself, who wouldn't want to get away from someone so violent? It seems I understand why Iris became so used to dealing with amnesia. Perhaps in her previous life, she had hinted at breaking up with Zephyr to avoid the horrors of their relationship. The behavior he exhibited made Iris pull away, so she chose to pretend she had memory loss to break things off. Her acting was pretty unconvincing, but Zephyr loved her so much in their past life that he believed her without question, directing his anger toward me instead. All the odd things happening now confirmed that my suspicion was right. The light of Zephyr's life had dimmed again, and he didn't want to accept it, so he came to confront me. He would rather think that I was the one manipulating events, and that his first love was still perfect. Realizing this, I could only think to call him an idiot. The tears of a villain aren't worth pity, and I couldn't care less about his emotional roller coaster. So I turned away, leaving his anguished cries echoing in the air. How amusing it is that the misery of a scoundrel makes for good sleep. My summer vacation was amazing. Every day I enjoyed gossip brought by the class monitor, who bragged about being like a bat flying around the melon field to gather fresh news for me. After that fateful day, Zephyr visited Iris at the hospital a few times. At first, she kept up the appearance of someone on the edge of breaking down whenever he appeared. Iris would go through the routine of having headaches, crying, and forgetting things. Eventually, the other patients started complaining. Iris then grew tired of the act, grabbed the doctor's hand, and told Zephyr directly, "Yes, I've been pretending." "So what?" "Zephyr, you poor fool. Do you really expect me to spend my life with you? You claimed your paintings would sell for high prices, but what have you accomplished? How ridiculous. Stop bothering me. We're done." Zephyr's world collapsed. He spiraled into madness, painting furiously, trying to prove his worth. But no matter what he created, no one bought it. People said his paintings lacked soul and were nothing more than pretty pictures collecting dust with no real value. The class monitor told me all this with wide eyes before spitting out a sigh. Who does he think he is, with that lazy attitude? How could his art be worth anything? I curiously asked her, "How do you know all this, Miss Badger?" The monitor proudly took my hand and explained, "You wouldn't believe it. I camped at the hospital every day, pretending to be Iris's best friend just to hear the latest updates. Iris couldn't blow my cover because of her fake amnesia. Eventually, she got so fed up with both of us that she told us to leave. We both laughed until we had tears in our eyes. I have to admit, Iris is quite something. Soon after, our college entrance exam results came out, and I got the call from my dream university. The class monitor was even more thrilled than I was. She hugged me tightly with tears in her eyes, shouting, "This is amazing. We'll be together again." We made plans to go on a trip together to relax. For the first time since my reincarnation, life felt truly beautiful. We returned from the trip a bit tired, but incredibly happy. After we parted ways, I headed home alone, only to be met with an unwelcome visitor at the entrance, Zephyr. I politely tried to walk past him, but he blocked my path. Eventually, with my patience wearing thin, I said, "Excuse me, let me through. I need to go home." His eyes were red as he told me, "Without you, I can't create anything worthwhile anymore." I couldn't help but laugh at his words. "Am I your paintbrush? Why do you blame everything on me? Your girlfriend's fake amnesia is my fault too? Am I your scapegoat, Zephyr? How shameless can you be?" He grabbed my arm and shook his head frantically. "Listen to me, please. I used to think Iris was my true muse, that only my love for her could inspire me. But I was wrong. It's you. It's always been you." His sudden declaration of affection meant nothing to me. "Belated feelings are worth less than grass," I replied coldly, pushing his hand away and staring him straight in the eyes. "Zephyr, Why are you so pathetic? Didn't you say I wasn't worthy? Didn't you want me to leave and suffer forever? What happened to your pride and stubbornness? Did they die along with your moonlight? He looked up at me in disbelief, but I simply walked past him, dragging my suitcase behind me. I heard a thud, followed by Zephyr's desperate cry, I really love you, please give me one more chance. I didn't stop or look back. On the day I left for school, I ran into Zephyr again. Unlucky timing. He had been hanging around near my house recently, sketching in his notebook. Every time I went out, he would hand me a drawing, but I didn't even glance at it. I stepped on it, muttering how ugly it was. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw him crouch down, picking up the crumpled paper as if it were something precious. Then, he tried handing it to me again. You said I could draw you beautifully, if that's what you wanted. His voice trembled and tears glistened in his eyes. Please forgive me. I'll only draw you from now on. All my paintings will be of you. His words made me restless, but I couldn't waste any more time listening to his pleas. I sneered at him. Zephyr, you already painted something for me. Don't you remember? You displayed it on the school bulletin board. Your love is really something. In our previous life, I had taken care of everything for Zephyr, helping him focus solely on his art. I found buyers for his work, promoted him, and made him famous. But this time, without me, he couldn't even create a single decent painting. It served him right. Zephyr trembled, but I had no intention of sparing him. I showed you the pregnancy test results, and there was blood when you opened the door. Was that your idea of a surprise? You tried to kill yourself on the day your ex-girlfriend got married. You two must have really been in love. You even live-streamed your suicide note, and the entire internet blamed me. You vowed to make me regret it for the rest of my life. Well, Zephyr, now I do regret it. What happened to your moonlight? Zephyr's face turned pale, and he began sobbing. He dropped to his knees, grabbing the hem of my pants, begging, I didn't know we had a child. If I had known, I never would have tried to kill myself. Please forgive me, Astrid. Let's go back to how we used to be. We had been together for 8 years, and Zephyr knew exactly how to manipulate me, keeping me devoted to him. But now, I saw through his games. I kicked him away. Zephyr, you don't deserve me. With that, I left, dragging my suitcase behind me. I haven't heard from Zephyr since. I went to the Department of Aerospace Engineering at Tsinghua University and fully immersed myself in my studies and new life. One day, I missed a call from Zephyr while working on an experiment. Later, I saw a text message from him. Astrid, I loved the wrong person. Let's be together in the next life. Shortly after, news broke about a psychotic man who had attacked his ex-girlfriend and then committed suicide before the police could arrive. When they searched his home, they found a painting, done in blood, titled Regret. The class monitor told me the man was Zephyr, clicking her tongue and shaking her head. I always knew there was something off about him. And now he's done something like this. I commented on the news. Instead of calling it Regret, it should be titled The Confession of a Murderer. People should stop praising the art of killers, or others might follow their example. It's worth noting that Zephyr's plan didn't go as expected. Iris didn't die. She only suffered minor injuries. The doctor who treated her fell in love and proposed immediately. The class monitor and I attended their wedding. I toasted to their happiness, but the class monitor leaned over and whispered, Not so fast. Look at the way the doctor gazes at her, like she's his favorite lab rat. I think he might be a psychopath, too. I felt a shiver run down my spine and quickly hushed her. Stop talking nonsense. We're here to celebrate, not ruin the event. She pouted, still unsatisfied. I'm telling you, I'm a great judge of character. Trying to distract her, I asked, So, what should we have for dinner? Crayfish or KFC? Without hesitation, she chose crayfish. The end.